So hello everyone, welcome to today's training session. It's been a pretty wild month, so much has changed. Here at J-Curve, we're now all working remotely, so today's session definitely feels a little bit different from my perspective. Our team have been in touch with lots of customers and pretty much everyone is being impacted one way or another, with everything that's going on. So we'll be running some additional free training sessions over the coming weeks to try and address some of the common challenges you might be experiencing and see how we might be able to use NetSuite to help you there. So on to today's training. The aim of today is to provide a crash course in NetSuite. If you're new to NetSuite or if you're just needing a refresher on NetSuite, you should get a fair bit out of today's training. There's so much to NetSuite, it's impossible to get everything into 2 hours. In saying that, we've tried to make sure we take you through the essentials today to hopefully give things a bit more context and to help you get more out of NetSuite. We've had input from a range of our consultants and support team and also evaluated our support ticket history with our customers to make sure today's session content is as relevant as possible. So let's get into things. I'll just go through some housekeeping before we start. So for those of you that aren't familiar with Zoom, if you have a question or if I'm going too fast, please just raise the hand button and let me know and I will slow down. We have the Q&A option, so feel free to ask questions along the way. I generally don't answer them throughout the session, and we generally don't have time at the end of the session to answer them, but we do compile them all together at the end and publish responses to the Q&A when we publish the video recordings as well. So yeah, by all means, ask questions as things come up and they'll all get addressed with the published materials. After the session, you're welcome to email any additional questions to training@jcurve.com.au and I monitor that email box and make sure that any of those additional questions are included when we post the recording as well. So that's Zoom. Let's get into the agenda. So today we're going to talk a little bit about NetSuite language, so some of the key terms that are used in NetSuite. We're going to take a look at navigating NetSuite. So how to navigate, how to use your menu, where to find things. Got a typo there, that's very upsetting. We're going to take a look at set preferences, so things like setting up your email signature, setting up your appearance, etc. We'll look at using the CRM, so things like activities, reminders, sending emails, using the file cabinet. We're going to take a look at email templates and basic mail mergers using NetSuite. We'll look at data in NetSuite, so some of the typical sort of data that you come across in your day-to-day usage, entities, items, transactions, and explaining what that all is. We'll spend a little bit of time looking at entry and transaction forms, so some of the main things that you use in NetSuite again, and we'll also look at form layout. We'll take a look at the lead prospect customer process. We'll be looking at sales order process and related transactions. Purchasing, we'll touch on some of the key information that you need to be aware of regarding financials. We'll cover off some things around users, licenses, roles and permission settings. We'll have a quick look at importing, so using your CSV files to import and export. We'll be looking at reports, save searches and suite analytics just to introduce you to some of the basic concepts there. Your dashboard, other things to know in NetSuite when you're using NetSuite, and some shortcuts and tips. So we'll be covering off lots of shortcuts and tips throughout the session, and then there's a bit of a summary towards the end as well. Okay, so just getting into some of the things around NetSuite language. So you'll often hear or see within NetSuite typical terms that are referred to. So I thought I would include this, and this PowerPoint will be published when we publish the recordings as well. So you can go back and look at this, but these are just some of the key terms that you should be familiar with and understand what they mean. So we'll just take a minute or two to look at some of these. So a record is an entry of information that's related to a single business concept. A form is a page through which you enter records and transactions, and they typically contain fields and tabs of information. Fields are a place on a record or transaction where information is entered. And I might actually just go straight into a record so I can make a bit more sense of this as we're looking at it. So if we open a sales order, for example, and this sales order is just a transaction record, and you've got your typical areas down here. So I'll just go back to my PowerPoint. You've got your sub-tabs. So they are the records or transactions that are clustered by subcategory, which is what I was just showing you along here. You've got lists, which are menus of values that you can select in a field. You'll hear the term script, and that's really just a method of customization and a way of getting things into your NetSuite account. We've got roles, which basically are a set of permissions that are assigned to a NetSuite user. Centers, which are groupings of similar links and information. Sublists, which are lists within a record. For example, where you see a list of sales transactions within a customer record. Entity, which is a record within NetSuite, such as employer, supplier, customer, or contact. Item receipt, so this is where we're getting into transactions now, but an item receipt is basically a transaction that accounts for the receipt of items, and that's typically from a supplier, and it links to a purchase order and bill. Item fulfillment, which is a transaction that accounts for fulfillment of items to customer, and that links to a sales order and invoice. Invoice versus bill, this is a big one. So just understanding the difference in NetSuite, an invoice always relates to a customer invoice and a bill always relates to a supplier or vendor bill. And the other one is cash sale versus invoice. So a cash sale means an invoice was paid at the time that the transaction was created. It doesn't mean that it was paid in cash necessarily, although it may. And an invoice is on account to be paid according to the due date. So yeah, this will make more sense as we go through things, but I just wanted to include some slides around that common language because it is important to understand what it's referring to there. So now let's take a look at navigating NetSuite, and here's where I'll go into my NetSuite account. Just maybe make this a tiny bit bigger so you can see everything okay, and I'll go into my home here. Okay, so a couple of things to just be aware of. You've got your role information there, or your user information there, and you've got any roles that you've got assigned to your user against here. Now, just bearing in mind that when you view all roles, you can also set certain roles to inactive. You can see I've got a lot more roles here, but I've just set the roles that I want to see to inactive, and basically unticked everything so that everything else is inactive. And that just gives me a short list of the ones that I want to see. I should have probably made some more inactive today. So for today's session, we're just looking at my Manana training account. And so I would typically set everything else to inactive. So if I go down and do that, and you'll see that when we submit that, you'll now just see that short list of roles appearing. So I obviously have lots of roles because I have access to several accounts. Typically, you may not have as many, but if you're an administrator, it's worth noting that you should have main roles applied to your employee records so that you can easily see and what other employees are seeing and doing in the system. It can be a handy thing to have. So just going back to our home. So you've got a feedback option here. You've got help, which takes you through to NetSuite help, which I'll cover off toward the end of the session, but we'll just quickly go there so you can see what that is. So there's your NetSuite help. And here you've got a whole range of shortcuts. So they are shortcuts to things like events, phone calls, customer records, and you can personalize the shortcuts that you can see here simply by clicking on personalize. So if there are things that you have to do on a regular basis, you may want to add them to your list of quick links here, and you can see the ones that I've got included there. Okay, so back to our home. You've got your global search, which basically lets you search for anything in your NetSuite account. And I've got here some shortcuts to help you use your global search effectively. So where you're looking for a saved search, for example, you can type SE or SEARCH for search. And I'll just show you. So if we go back here, so if I'm looking for a search with my initials in it, for example, I can type SE and that immediately just brings up any searches. Now, if I didn't type SE and I just typed AH, it's probably not even enough. There you go. You can see it does bring up searches because that's what I've got my initials against, but it will bring up anything else that has AH in the name. So it is a good idea to help you use NetSuite effectively to basically provide a reference to what it is that you're looking for to help filter the relevant information for you. So page or PA will take you to things like reports. I or item is for item. So you can see again, if we go I, and let's just say I put that in. Now it will bring up inventory items, but again, anything else that may be starting with an I, whereas if you go inventory, for example, well, I mean, in this scenario, I've got much the same things, but yeah, you can basically see that as you get more data in your system, providing a clear reference to what it is that you're searching for helps. So if you're looking for things like leads, that's a way to search for leads. Prospect, CU or customer for customer. We've also got things like if you're looking for an item and you're looking for specific colors, for example, if you use or between your search words, it will look for all three colors. And I guess the big one with the global search is the wildcard. So if you're looking for something and you're using your wildcard, that basically and I'll do some examples as we go through, that searches for things that, anything that has those references in it. So if I type wildcard Adele, I know that I've got a customer record in here that is Adele's Avenue, and you'll see that it's not only bringing up the customer record, but it's bringing up an opportunity associated with Adele and a contact associated with Adele. So the wildcard is a really frequent one that we tend to use in NetSuite to help us find what it is that we're after. If you're searching for the name of an item, for example, and you've got thousands of items in your system and you're not sure exactly what the name is, you can also use things like the wildcard twice. So if you think you might have ice cream in there, for example, and you're not sure if you've got a dash or a space, you can use the wildcard to help you find that information. Okay. And then you've got things like linked records and transactions once you get into actual records and transactions in the system, which we'll touch on in a bit more detail. So just going back to our home view, you've got your recent, records shortcut. You've got your star, so that takes you to things like tasks, calendar, create invoices. I mean, these are basically ones that I've set up, but again, you can set up your shortcuts so that you can include whatever is relevant to you here so that you can find things easily when you're in your dashboard view. Okay, so then we go to home and you've got your dashboard, which is what we're looking at here. So whether you click on home or whether you click on home dashboard, it's one of the same. And then you've got set preferences, which we'll be going into in a moment. This is basically your main menu bar. Now, I'm logged in as an administrator, and so I'm using what's known as the Classic Center. There are a range of different centers, and centers are just basically a way of as we touched on in the earlier slide, a way of clustering key functions relating to a core role. So typically you have centers that relate to finance or to warehouse or whatever they may be, sales, and basically depending on the view, and I think here I've got an example, so I'll just go into my salesperson role and just note here, this is my Classic Center menu, whereas if we go into our sales role, which is referring to the sales center, you'll see that my menu has changed. Okay, so here you can see I've got things like leads, opportunities, things that are more related to a sales role. Okay. So just going back to my admin role. All right, and then you've got your dashboard, which we'll be going through toward the end. You can manage your dashboard layout through these links here. So you can personalize your dashboard, change the layout, and view the portlet settings, which we'll go through in a separate slide toward the end of the session. We're now just going to take a few minutes to look at the set preferences area of NetSuite. So I'll go back into my account and we'll go set preferences. Okay, so basically you've got some subtabs here which have some areas to help you set your preferences according to what you need to see and do. Under general, and there's a lot in here, so we won't go into everything, but I'll just touch on a few key ones that will be relevant. So you always put your email address in here, and note that that setting applies to all of the roles. So if you've got multiple roles, that email setting will relate to all of them. You can put your signature in. Now you'll note that you've got an option to drag your box out. I've got a basic signature in here. If you have HTML code for your signature, which a lot of organizations will have, you can simply put your HTML code in here and then your signature will appear. I think there's a limit of 4,000 characters in this box. So if your HTML code exceeds the 4,000 characters, you will need to reduce it. So by adding, and here I've just put a basic signature in. The BR is for breaks, so that we've got distinctions between the key parts of my signature. And I'm also referencing our logo, which is in our file cabinet, which I'll cover off shortly. So you want to typically add your signature to your messages, which basically means whenever you're sending an email out of NetSuite, your signature will automatically appear on that email. You've got things like your localization settings, so language, time zone, etc. Whether you want your first day of the week to be Monday, you might want it to be Sunday, your date formats and things like that. Now over here, one thing to note is the address mapping type. So if you tend to look at things like customer or supplier records and use the map function, it's worth setting this to whatever your preferred browser is. I've set mine to Google, and that will just take me through to the Google Maps option so that the map is a bit more relevant to the zone that I'm in. Show internal IDs. Internal IDs are basically the ID of any record, transaction, etc. in the system. You don't always need to have this ticked, but it is a good idea, particularly where you're doing things like data imports and exports, because the internal ID is the unique identifier for that record. So I've got that ticked in this instance. You've got some settings here around a show last sub account. So that's really relevant where you might have parent-child records and things like that, and you just want to see the last part of that record name, so the child name, as opposed to the parent name or whatever the case may be. So you can manage those preferences here. Then you've got things like optimizing NetSuite. So you can have things like the number of rows in list segments and the maximum entries in drop downs. So the number of rows is where you look at a list. So let's say you're looking at a list of several thousand transactions in a saved search. This sets the number that you see per page. So it's worth having a number around 50 or say 100 so that you can actually see, you know, a fair amount of results in your saved search when you run it. And the maximum entries in drop downs, that's just a setting around when you search for something, the maximum entries that you need to have in order for the search to show results. So I'll go through those as we go through the presentation. Appearance. So this is really just where you can set things like your dashboard appearance. So you can see I've set mine to my screen, but you can set whatever you want here. It's worth noting that if you have multiple roles, it can be a good idea to set different color themes to those roles so that you can easily identify what role you're in. You can choose things like your screen font and things like that as well. In terms of entry forms, you've got some settings here. So yeah, there's a fair bit in here. One other one I just want to point out quickly is transactions. So if you're sending things like invoices out of NetSuite, which most of you should be, you may want the invoice to automatically attach as a PDF as opposed to HTML. You can set those preferences here, and it's worth doing so that you don't have to go through that process every time you send an email. Analytics, these are just some settings around analytics and how you use things like reports. So again, I won't go into all of these, but you can see we've got a range of settings there. Activities just lets you set preferences around your activities. So, you know, for example, if you want to show yourself as busy when you create events and things like that. Reminder times. Then you've got alerts where you can set preferences there. You can restrict your restrict your view. So if you're using a NetSuite account, for example, and you've got multiple subsidiaries, you can restrict your view so that you're just looking at areas as they relate to you. Or if you work in a specific department or location, or only a particular class relates to you, which are the main ways that we classify things in J-curve NetSuite, then you can set those here so that you don't basically see a whole heap of irrelevant information if that's appropriate. And then custom preferences just around electronic bank payments if that's relevant. So that's just a bit of a walkthrough around the main set preferences. We'll just go back to our slide. And we've touched on most of those there. Now, it's just worth noting that with regard to preferences, if you're an administrator, they can be set by the administrator against the user's role. However, a user can override certain preferences in their set preferences area. Okay, so we touched on email signature. I've just got a slide in here that that refers to those instructions, and we also have several articles in our J-curve support hub. Simply search email signature. I'll just go into that and show you. So this is our J-curve solutions support hub. You can, if you type email signature and hit search, you'll see that there's a whole heap of articles that then come up, and here's a step-by-step process to creating your email signature. So because we do have lots to get through, I won't go through everything in detail, but I'll certainly point you to the right material so that you can then follow through and do things as you need to. So next we're going to take a bit of a look at using the CRM. You can do things, and I might just go into a customer record at this point. I'll go into my favorite customer record. So you can use the CRM and set things like activities from records specifically so that they relate to those records, and you can do them from your dashboard and your main menu as well. So if we look at your activities overview, for example, and I'll just open that in a separate tab, depending on the role that you do in NetSuite, this can be a really handy view for you. So your activities overview, and activities refer to your tasks, your phone calls and events, okay? So when we refer to activities, it can be any one of those three. So if you have lots of activities, you can manage them via your activities overview. You can see we've got a view of your calendar, which you can look at by, you know, week, month, day, etc. You can add new events if that's particularly relevant to you. You can show your tasks and you can manage your tasks here. So if you wanted to update a task, for example, you could click on that pencil icon, which indicates edit, and you could update it. And I'll just show you that too while we're in here. So my task is to send a quote. I was meant to do it quite some time ago, which I haven't, but let's say I've completed that today. I can mark it as complete. I can update the status to completed, and I can save that task. And then if we refresh our portlet, we should see that task drop off, which it has, okay? So, and you can list your phone calls here as well. So there are different ways to view your activities. Another way, which we'll go through when we get to the dashboard section, is to set up an activities portlet. So you can have tasks, phone calls, and events all within the one portlet. But depending on whether activities are a big part of your role or not, this can be a good way to manage them. You can also go straight to your activity list list and things like that. Okay, so that is your activities overview there. So let's just go into a customer record and look at how we can use our activities there. So if you're in a customer record, you'll note that you have a communication tab, and then you have another tab within the communication sub-tab called activities. And here you've got your new task, log task, new phone call, log phone call, new event, log event, view history. So the main difference here is creating a new task or phone call or event lets you schedule it in advance. If you're logging a task or a phone call or an event, it's typically already happened and you're just creating a record of that activity, okay? So to set a new task, let's say I wanted to call this customer in a week's time to talk about something specific, I would simply click on new task. I would say follow up on discussion, for example. I'm assigning it to myself. Now, if you have a team, for example, and you want to assign it to another member of your team, you can do that here. So you would assign it to them, but in this instance, I'm assigning it to myself. I might want to notify myself by email as a reminder. I'm going to put my due date as next week. So I'll pop that in. Reserving a specific time so that I do it when I need to do it. So I'm going to put 10 o'clock. Now, when you reserve time, you'll note that they're in half-hour blocks. So, you know, just set it for, even if you think it's going to be a 5-minute phone call, just set it for that band. And you can either get reminders in your browser or email. I'm going to select email. And I'm going to say I want it 10 minutes before I'm due to follow up that task. Now, you could also be setting this as a phone call as well, but I'm setting it as a task in this instance. Related records, so you can link anything specific to the task if that's relevant. If you're looking at availability, you can look at that there as well. And you've got a communication tab there. You'll see these reappearing themes throughout NetSuite as you get more familiar with it. So I'm going to save that task for me. And you'll see now that that task appears under this section of the customer record, okay? And if we were to go back to my activities, we should see that task appear. I may need to refresh my portlet. Yeah, and there is my task that I've just set myself, okay? It's much the same process, whether it's a task. You'll see the new phone call is a slightly different option. You'll have some different options here. Again, you can put your subject, set your reminders, etc. Okay. And events, if we go into a new event, you can do things like invite. You'll see I've got a conflict here because it's automatically defaulting to a time where I've got something else happening. So that's a good safety net in terms of NetSuite. If I put that forward to say the 8th, you'll see that should disappear. And then I'll set my date, time. I can put my attendees in here so you can invite other staff people. I know I've got George in my team, so I can invite him, etc., etc. Okay. So that's a bit of an overview around, you can also send a message. So if you wanted to invite multiple attendees to an event, you can send your message. Hi, please attend my event, and save, and that will, need to put a title. You can see that's a mandatory field there indicated by the asterisk, and that will then send to the people that you've listed as your attendees. Okay, so that's a bit of an overview on activities. Reminders, I'll actually touch on, no, I can touch on that now. If we go back to our dashboard, just while I've got it there. Reminders is a portlet within your dashboard, which basically lets you set up reminders to any key actions that you have, whether they're activities or processing actions, etc. So to set up your reminders, you can simply go to the setup option. Now here you'll see it's listing a whole heap of options for me to add as reminders. The C indicates that it's a custom search. So in this instance, if I wanted to add something else to my reminders portlet, I would just drag it over into this section, which is the current selections. You can see my current selections listed here are the ones that are here. If I wanted to remove something, I would simply click it off. So let's say I wanted to remove orders to receive, you'll see that disappears, and when I save and refresh, that will change. So if you wanted to add something, you can click on, let's say I wanted to look at sales team activities, you can see now that I've added that there, save, and you'll see sales team activities is appearing there, and the other one has dropped off. If you don't want reminders on your dashboard, which I wouldn't necessarily recommend, but if it's not relevant to you, you can simply remove it. Now, if you want to drill into any of the information that you've got listed there, you can just click on it, and it will show you a search of all of the sales team activities, which is as per this save search that I've got set up, which we will cover off when we get to the save search section. Okay, so that is reminders. Emails, we'll go into emails. I think the next slide is on, I'll take you through emails basically now, and file cabinet. So file cabinet, if you go into your main menu, documents, files, file cabinet, this is basically a file cabinet within NetSuite. You can set it up to have meaningful folders and put your files in it, and then use those files when you're sending emails, for example, to attach files and things like that. This is a demo account, so obviously I haven't set this up too much, but just to take you through that, if I wanted to add a new folder, so let's say I wanted to add a folder that had all of our sales collateral in it, I would, don't know if I've spelled that correctly. You can, if it's a subfolder of another folder in there, you can select the subfolder just by clicking on list, and you'll see all of your options there. Type just defaults to documents and files. If you've got a description, so this folder contains materials for sales team to use. Okay, now you can restrict your folders by class, department and location if the information you're storing in there only relates to specific classes, departments or locations within your business. You can also restrict the folders by group, so you can set up groups in NetSuite. So for example, you could set up a finance group, and you could have a folder that just relates to the finance team, so that they're the only ones that can see it. You can make folders private, and you can also inactivate folders. Okay, so let's just save our document folder. You'll see it now appears in this menu, and if you want to add files, you simply click on add file, and you'll see that this takes you to, let's go into my files, that basically takes you to your options on your computer, and you can add attachments in from there. Here I've got our signature, which is the signature that I have put on my email signature that we went through earlier as well. Okay, so it's a really good idea to store key documents relating to your business in the filing cabinet, and when we get to things like email templates, you can also attach files as a standard if that's relevant to you as well. Okay, so that's the filing cabinet. Just in terms of emails, well, let's just quickly go through an email. So I'll go back to my customer record, and we're going back into the communication tab and clicking on email. Okay, so what this basically means is I can now send an email from this customer record, and typically that's going to be to one of the contacts on this customer record. So at this point, I've got a test contact in here with an email address. You'll see that basically I have recipients appear here, and this is as per the list of contacts that are attached to the customer record. So I'll just show you what I mean by that. If we go to the relationships tab of this customer record, you can see that I've got a test contact listed here, which is why they're appearing as a contact in that drop-down list when I go to email them. Okay, so just going back to our communication tab, click on email. it's just defaulting to Adele's Avenue because that's the main recipient on the record, okay? And I don't actually have an email in there. It's always best practice to have an email address against every record in your main section of your record, which is here, okay? I'll just show you so you can see the difference. Okay, so if I put my, oops, if I put my email address in here, okay, and oh, that's fine. That's just telling me that I've used this email address on other records, which it's a demo account, so that's okay to save anyway. I'll save that. And now if I go back to my email, just leave that and reload it. You'll see that my email address is appearing, okay? Now, when you're sending an email, you can also add additional recipients. So let's say I wanted to copy it to someone in my organization. I can type their name and you'll see they appear, okay? Their email address appears, and you can either include them in the to section of the email, or if you want to CC them, you can tick on the CC, or BCC if you want to blind copy them in. Add them, and that's your recipients updated there, okay? So then you can go into your message area. Now, because we've set up my email signature, you'll see that that's appearing here. It's a very basic email signature. It's not a HTML, but at least we've included the logo and my key contact details, which is all I really needed at this point. Now, if you've got email templates set up, which we'll be going into in a moment, they will appear here. You'll see if you select an email template, it automatically populates with the details of the template. But in this instance, I'm just going to type my message and say, hi, you know, please find information attached as discussed. Okay. Now you would put a subject, and you can see again that that's a mandatory field. So information as discussed. I often like to put the customer name there as well, so you can do things like that. And then if you've got an attachment, you can attach that there. So going back to that concept of the file cabinet, if you wanted to attach a file, you can either attach it from your desktop. So if you wanted to attach it from your desktop, you would simply choose a file, and you'll see that that defaults to all of my files on my computer. Or if you want to, just cancel that, or if it's in your file cabinet, you can simply drop down your list and it will bring up any attachments that you've got here. And you can also search for the name of that attachment. So if I had saved a file in the sales collateral, I could simply search for it here and add it in. Okay, that's not the right one, but you would add it. And then to send your message, now before you send your message, it's always a good idea to preview it. So you can click preview there and you can see your information and how it's going to appear. And then you simply hit merge and send, and that email will send, okay? Now, we've sent that email, and you can see that that email now appears in the communication section of the customer record at the top. You can do things like click on the date order if you're looking for a communication that is older rather than newer. Okay, and that's a common theme throughout NetSuite, clicking on the headings to sort your data in different ways. Another handy tip for the communication area of records and transactions is the view history option. So the view history option will show you any messages, for example, that you've sent to this customer, and you can see I've got 3 there. Okay, now let's say I know certainly with our NetSuite account for J-Curve Solutions, we have customer records that have hundreds and sometimes thousands of communications against them. So if you're searching for a key email with a keyword, you can then do things like Control F and look for, you know, let's say in this instance, I'm looking for enclosed, Control F, and you'll see that it will take you to the communication that has that word in it. So that can be a really good way to find key information when you've sent it to a customer. Now, the same concept applies to transactions in NetSuite as well. So I could be in an invoice record associated with this customer and send an email from the invoice. We're going to go into this in a little bit of detail further, but it's a concept, as I say, that you'll see throughout NetSuite. Okay, so we've covered off the CRM in a little bit of detail. Let's go through to email templates and merges. So if we go to documents, templates, email templates, this basically lets you set up email templates in NetSuite so that you can use them. A typical example might be when you're sending an invoice to a customer. So to set up a new email template, you simply click New. You put the name of what your email template is. You can put your content in here, put your standard subject in there. You can restrict access. So again, that concept of a group in NetSuite, you may just have a particular group that you want to restrict this template to. You can put a description for the template so that it explains what the template is. You can inactivate your template. So if the template is no longer relevant, you can inactivate it. And you can also select the record type which the template relates to. So entity would typically be your customer or supplier record. Transaction might be your invoice or your purchase order. Custom records, cases relate to support cases, and projects relate to projects in NetSuite. So if it just relates to a particular record type, you can select that there. If we go back into our templates view, you'll see there, I've only got 4 email templates set up in this demo account, but you'll see where I've selected transaction, it shows the record type and it shows the description of the email template as well, okay? So that's where you access your email templates. Just a point to note, if you are using templates and you want your signature that you've set up in your preferences to appear at the bottom of your template, there's some code there that you can put in to ensure that that appears. And I'll just go in and show that. So if we go into this email template test, okay, and I'll just make my screen a bit bigger for a moment here because the font is quite small. This is basically just code that's saying it wants to look at my signature, so that you can put whatever content you need in here, and then you can put your signature, and it's looking at preferences and the message section and my signature. Okay, so you can also do things like insert other information from these field pickers here. And specific fields, okay? And we have lots of articles in our support hub around using email templates, and the NetSuite support Suite Answers does as well. So that's just to introduce you to the concept of templates. You can certainly pre-populate information in your templates and do a whole heap of things with them. So I'll just go back to a slightly more normal view. Now, you can also customize an email template and link it to a particular transaction. So for example, you might want a template to be used for invoices, and you can create an email specifically for when you save and send invoices. So there's some instructions to do that. So in that instance, you would go to customization forms, transaction forms, and I'll just show you that. And let's say I wanted to go into my invoice, which is this one. Okay, so what we're in here is just a list of all of the different forms within your NetSuite account, which again, we cover off a bit later. But I'll just click onto my invoice form just to show you this feature. It's taking a moment. It's taking quite a while on my home internet, but I think it's going okay so far. Here we go. And you'll see here that I've selected under email message template, the email template that I want to use every time I save and send an invoice, okay? So that's where that gets set. And that can be a good option for automating your invoicing and the sending of your invoicing. okay, and that screen's there, and I've just included that code that we talked about earlier if you do wish to include your message signature. All right, so we've sort of gone ahead on some of these topics, but this is just a slide to just talk through the data in NetSuite in a little bit more detail. So just to clarify it, NetSuite stores your data in 3 main categories. So that is entities, and entities typically refer to lead, prospect, customer, contacts, vendors, partners, and employees. Then you've got your items, which are the goods or services that you set up to buy and sell. And then you've got your transactions. So typically things like opportunities, sales orders, estimates, invoices, bills, etc. Some of which have an accounting impact, okay? So key fields, which we've sort of started to look at and subtabs to be aware of are these ones. So we'll just take a moment to go into our customer record again. We have looked at the communication tab a little bit as part of our activities section, but let's take a look at a customer record in a bit more detail. So we'll go back to our customer. Okay, so this is typically a customer record. A few things to note, you've got list, view dashboard and your search options here. So view dashboard is available on your customer and supplier records, and it's really just a view of the information relating to the record that you're on. So you'll see it brings up some different information around the customer that may be relevant to you, just as a quick view if you're wanting to sort of see key information about the record that you're looking at. So we'll go back to our form view. You've got search. So search will take you to search your customer records, and whatever record you're in, clicking on search will take you to a screen that lets you start to search on that same type of record, okay? And this kind of ties into the save searches section of our session today, but basically you can do immediate searches to look for customer information if that's relevant to you. So I'll touch on that when we get to the save searches in a bit more detail. Okay, and then if we go back, just go back to my customer record. You can go back to your customer record a few different ways. And then you've got list, which will basically give you a list of all customers, okay, by clicking on that. And then you've got your forward backward button as well. So you can change the view of your customers simply by customizing your view. But at the moment, this is giving me a list of all of my customers. It's looking at key fields of data on the customer record. Now, just a couple of things to touch on here. We're looking at you'll see that, and this is again a theme in NetSuite that you'll see regularly, we've got a total of 33. So that's telling me that I've got a total of 33 customers in this list here, okay? And here's all my customers listed. Now, with the set preferences that we did earlier, I set a limit of 100. So because I've only got 33 customers here, they're all appearing in this initial screen. But if I had several hundred, for example, I would then have an option to click through to a second and third page. Now, the pencil icon relates to fields that are editable when you're looking at a certain view of information, okay? And that is dictated by having this button on. You'll see if I switch this button off and go out of edit mode, we'll lose the pencil icon and it's just showing us the key information that we're looking at for our customers. So this is an inline edit function is what it's called, and we do recommend you use it with caution, and I'll show you why in a moment. So another thing to note, you've got certain information that you can click on and certain information that you can't. So here I can see that I can click on this information. It's often a good idea, depending on how you like to work, if you want to stay in this screen, to open the information in a separate tab. So let's say I wanted to look at this customer, I can open it in a new tab and that takes me to the customer record. If I then want to go back to my view, I can simply go back to the tab that I've left open. So as I say, it's showing key information here, things like the company name, the sales rep, the status. And if we look at the customer record, we can see the company name, the status, the sales rep, etc. So all this is really doing, this list, sorry, is looking at fields of information that are available on the customer record, okay? And you can, as I say, customize this to show whatever it is that you're wanting to see. Now, just back to the inline edit option, you can update the information here. So let's say the status, let's say I'm looking at a list of customers and I realize that this is actually a lost customer. I can actually go straight into here and change the status to customer lost. And that will actually, as soon as I click off that, that will actually change the record, okay? So if we now look at this customer record and refresh, we'll see this status update to close lost, okay? Which, as I say, it can be a very handy feature to use, but you need to use it with absolute caution. Now, one other thing there, if you want to see history of a record or transaction that you're looking at, you can click on System Information, and that will show you any changes or updates that have been made to the record. And here you can see that we've got a record of that change. So the field that changed was the status. The old value was customer closed one, and the new value is customer lost customer. So that's a good way to track changes that have occurred with a record or transaction or item in your system. I'm going to change that back because it is not a lost customer. So customer closed one. But it can be a good way, for example, if you've changed sales rep for a customer or you know, for a handful of customers, you can then also do things like CSV imports if you've got a lot of records to update, but it's a good way to just do basic updates on the fly, okay? So going back to our slide, if we're looking at our customer record, we've got this is the main section of the record, and again, you can customize what you see on your customer record. You need to be in edit mode to do that. So I'll just show you the difference there. If you click on edit, you'll see we now have a customize button here. Now, typically your admins would only really have the option to customize forms. So again, proceed with caution, but if you are an admin, this may relate to you. So you can customize your form, and we'll go into this a little bit as we move through the presentation. So we're now in edit mode, just to note there. If we cancel that, just so I can keep showing you the record. You've got your sub-tabs here. So your main record has the primary customer information, which some of it is standard, and you can also change that by customizing it, as I said. You've got email, phone, and address details, and then you've got your sub-tabs. So relationships we've touched on. Now, just to clarify, because it is something that can get confusing for customers at times, contact records are different to customer records. Contact records are their own record, and they are attached to a customer record, okay? So if we open up this contact record in a new screen, you'll see that it's its own record with its own fields, and it is attached to the customer record. The other thing just to note on that is the individual versus company under type as well. So if you're dealing with leads and importing leads, for example, you typically may bring your leads in just as individuals if you're not sure on what their status is, and that's dictated by whether they're an individual or a company, okay? So just to clarify that. But in terms of contacts, they are a separate record and they attach to the customer record. And you'll see again some of those same themes. You've got a relationship tab, you've got communication. So if you have specific communication with a contact, it will be listed here. So let's say you've got 5 contacts on your customer record, but you're just emailing one contact, it will also appear against the contact record. You've got your activities, so a lot of the same things, your files, etc. Okay. So back to our customer records, some other sub-tabs that are worth noting. Communication tab, we've already sort of covered that off, so I won't waste any more time there. Address is just the address that can be edited. First, you have to be in edit mode, and then by clicking edit, default shipping and default billing should generally be ticked on for when we get to things like sales orders and picking and packing, etc. you've got your sales tab. Now, this is an important tab where you're looking at a customer record. Transactions is where it will show any transactions that relate to the record. And this is where we're talking about lists that relate to a record, okay? Now, at the moment, you'll see that you've got filters that let you filter the information that you're seeing under the sales tab and under the transactions tab. You'll see at the moment, we've got a handful of transactions here. Now, if I change the filter for billing status to either, we may see, I just don't know what I've got in here. Yeah, so you'll see that more transactions appear. Okay, now filters is often one that gets people because they forget that they've got a filter on, and they can be looking at the transactions and thinking, why can't I see that transaction? I know I've raised it. It's often because you've got your filter incorrectly set. So just revisit your filters, and that should help you find what you need. So that's billing status type. So let's say, and again, from a J-curve perspective, often we'll have hundreds or thousands of transactions against a customer. You can filter, just say you want to see invoices, you can type invoice, and you'll see invoice appears. Conversely, you can click on list and you'll see all of your available options that you can pick from. Okay, so in this instance, I just want to see invoices, and you can see now that it's reduced my list to 1 because I've only got 1 invoice against this customer. You can also, again, customize your view of what you see here. And again, that's a consistent theme in NetSuite. Opportunities, if you're using opportunities in NetSuite, so this goes back to the sales process in NetSuite, so which I touch on it in a little bit, but opportunities are the initial opportunity and also subsequent opportunities that relate to either a new lead or prospect or an existing customer, and you can put those in here, and so they are separate to the transactions. You can see a list of the items that the customer has purchased. You can see any qualification information you may have on this customer. And again, this is all customizable, and you can see upsell details. You can also customize the sub-tabs that you see here as well. Note that you've got a drop down here. So when you're in this section, it only displays 25, the first 25 records. So you can, to get through to other records, you can then click on the next section and then the next section. Again, a consistent theme in NetSuite. If you're using support, you've got your support tab here. Marketing, if you're using marketing campaigns, you'll see information here. Financial just summarizes key financial information relating to your customer. You've got some preferences here. So around sort of emails and things like that. System information is what we just looked at, and that I find a really handy area of being in NetSuite when you want to track what's gone on with a record or transaction, as I said. Okay, so there's some of the key fields for the customer record. Going back to our presentation, so we've done communication tab, sales, related records, and related records, that's a good one. So if we go into a transaction, so let's go into our sales tab and let's go into transactions. Again, we're only seeing 1 because we left that filter of invoice on. So if you don't want to see any filters, there's everything. And let's go into a sales order. Okay, so related records is a sub-tab typically against transactions, which will show any other related records associated with this transaction. So at the moment, this sales order has related records of a purchase order, which relates to the items that are selected on the sales order, and also an item fulfillment transaction, which is also related to the sales order. Okay, so that's just a good one to note, because when you're looking at related records against a transaction, you can always have a look at this list to kind of work your way through things depending on what it is that you're looking for. Okay. And we touched on that tip around the filters. It is an important one. Okay, I will just touch on an item record as well. So we've done our customer record. These are just my notes. We've touched on a sales order record, and let's look at an item record quickly. So going back to our main menu, we go to transactions, we're going to lists, accounting, and items. This is going to bring up a list of all of the items that I have in my account. At the moment, I'm filtering by inventory item, but depending on your setup and the items that you can have a whole heap of types within your item list. At the moment, I just need to look at my inventory items. Again, we've got our inline edit on, as you can see, which I'll turn off. And you can also see you can customize your view to look at the particular fields of your items as they relate to you. As I touched on earlier, in this instance, I've got a fair few items in my system. So you can see I'm looking at an initial page of items. And then if I want to look at more of my items, I can just click through to the second page, etc., or use the arrows. Okay. So let's pick an item. I'll open that up in a separate tab. Okay, so we've got our internal IDs turned on, so we can see our ID for this item. We've got key information set up against our item, and the key tabs for items, particularly inventory items, non-inventory items, are your purchasing inventory tab, your accounting tab. You've got your related records. Again, you've got your themes here, your communication tab. So if you've got specific communications that relate to an item, you can have them in here. You've got your preferences, which there's not a lot in, system information around your item, etc. So the main tab is really your purchasing inventory tab, where you can do things like set your purchase price. You've got your inventory management, you've got your vendor bill matching, and your locations. So if you've got your multiple locations set up in your J-Curve account, that is where you would set these up under locations. And obviously here is where you've got things like your quantity on hand, your reorder points, your preferred stock levels set, etc. So we won't go into this in too much detail, but just acknowledging that you've got your item records in NetSuite as well. You've also got things like your dropship and special order options against your item, etc. You can add your preferred suppliers in here as well. Okay. So that just goes through some of the key data in NetSuite. Just to talk through, and we may have covered some of this off already, entry and transaction forms. So we touched, when we were looking at one of our records earlier, I think our customer record, we touched on customizing forms. So I'll just go into that in a little bit more detail. So I've got my, hopefully I've still got my customer. I'll just open that one back up. Okay, so we talked about our edit and view mode. So let's just go into, I'll just go back to my slide for a moment. So we've talked about the difference between view and edit modes. We've talked about some of the field types. So you've got fields that you can click through to see data. You've got things like checkboxes, which we'll take a look at. And I guess just to point out that with your display types, some things can be clicked on, some things cannot. So you'll note that whenever you're on a record or transaction, you have those different display types depending on what it is that you're looking at. We'll go into the customize mode in a sec. We touched on view dashboard for customer and supplier records. I didn't touch on expand, so I'll do that now. This button here is an expand button on a record, and I think it's on transactions as well. And you'll see that this just gives you, it basically expands everything in the sub tabs. Okay, so sometimes you might have accidentally clicked it, or you might have clicked it and forgotten that you have, and you'll come back into a record and think, oh, this looks quite different to what I was used to. That's all it is the expand, and it's just giving all of your information on the one view, of which there's a lot. I don't tend to use it myself, but depending on what you do, it may be relevant. Okay, so if you want to neaten your view up, you just collapse it, and that collapses it back to the view that we were looking at. Okay. So let's just briefly go into customize. So you can customize your form or you can create a new field on the fly, remembering that this is typically an administrator's responsibility, but we will go in briefly. So all I really want to show here, and there's a bit to this. So again, just an introduction, but you've got the elements that relate to your form. So here you've got your name of your form, and I'll just show you as well. If we go to customization, lists, records, and fields, you've got, and this is a bit more administrator based, but you've got on forms, entry forms and transaction forms. So at the moment, we're looking at a customer record, which is considered to be an entry form. And then you've got your transaction forms, which are your quotes, sales orders, purchase orders, etc. So if we were to look at all of our forms here, I'll just to give this a bit of context, these are all of the entry forms that I currently have in my account. Now, you can see that you can select preferred forms here. And what that means is when you go into the edit option of a customer record, so I'll just, oh, this is also a shortcut. If you go into your recents and you want to go straight into edit mode, you can click on that as opposed to clicking on the view record and then editing. So I'm just going to go straight into that. Custom forms, this field here basically gives you a list of all of the available forms for the record that you're on. So you can see here that I've got 5 different forms, which are basically different views of the record that let you see and do different things. So depending on the role in the business, you may only want certain users to see one particular form, and that's where you set your preferred forms and things like that against the user or the role record. But this is sometimes, for example, you might be in a record and you'll think, why can't I see that field? It may be because you've got a different form that you're looking at as opposed to the one that you're used to. So just be mindful of this custom form box. So you'll see here that these are all the custom entry forms that are in the account. You'll see the type, so it will list whether it's CRM, entity, etc. It will show a subtype. You can tick your preferred. You can also make them inactive. So at the moment, we're looking at 51 custom entry forms. If I ticked on show inactive, oh, I don't have any inactive, but what it does give you is this option here to make things inactive. So let's say I wanted to make this one inactive. I could just click on that, and then when I submit, we'll see this drops down to 50. Oops, hang on. I'll take show inactives off, and you'll see my list drops down to 50. Okay, so if forms are no longer relevant in your business, just set them to inactive so they're not available for use. And then you can also set your preferred ones as well. Okay. So just going into customizing a form. So remembering that we were on our customer record and we went into customize. This is a section that really lets you customize your form completely. So it will show your sub tabs. It gives you an option to relabel things. It shows your field groups. There's a lot in here. So again, we won't be going into all of this, but it's just to introduce you to the concept of customizing forms and what it all means. You've got your fields. So again, you can choose which fields. Let's say I was creating a second variation of a form and I wanted to hide certain fields or field groups even, you would do all that in here, okay? You can also set role preferences and things like that. So for example, if I wanted to make this a preferred customer record for my salesperson, I would tick this here, and that is the form that they would see when they look up a customer record, okay? So that's just a bit of an introduction into customizing forms. All right, so and finally on this slide, we talked about the difference between contacts and customer records. All right, moving through. Just to recap, we talked about your custom form box, your drop-down forms. Yep, so we've covered off all of that. Great. Oh, and the tip there is have your admin remove fields you don't need on a form to simplify it. So often forms can be overwhelming in terms of the number of fields that you're looking at. So if there are things on there that aren't relevant, just simply hide them so that you don't see them on the form, and you can keep the form simple, which can also help you with I guess processes with your teams, etc., in terms of making sure they fill things out correctly. So we'll just touch on layout templates here, because with certain transactions, you have layout templates associated with them. So layout templates are used for printing or emailing, and they relate to things like quotes, invoices, purchase orders, etc. You'll note that there's a basic and an advanced option. So these are the menu paths to access the layout, which I'll take you to in a moment. And just going back to, we'll go into an invoice actually, so I can show you this. So let's go into this invoice and we'll edit it. Okay, and if we go into customize form. Okay, so as soon as you go into customize a form, you'll see that you have an option here that is printing type, advanced or basic, and that's referring to the advanced PDF versus the basic PDF. Okay, and you'll see then that you have some additional options around PDF layout versus HTML layout, etc. We're not going to cover this off in too much detail. We do have some good support articles in our support hub, but it's just to demonstrate the link or the relationship between forms and transactions and the PDF versions. So to access the PDF setup, you would go to customization forms, which I'll just show you now. Transactions, forms, PDF layouts, which relates to the form. Actually, if we look back here, we can see that it is a standard transaction layout. So then if we go here and we go standard transaction layout, this is the PDF layout that form is relating to. And you can see here that that's our preferred form. So if we click on customize, here it takes you to the PDF layout. So just to appreciate the relationship there between the PDF layout and the actual form, as I say, we've got some articles on that, and if you have questions around it, feel free to let me know and I can steer you in the right direction. Okay, so advanced PDF, more of you, as time goes on, will probably be using an advanced PDF. You can obviously make your templates look, do a lot more with them and make them look a lot more sophisticated with advanced PDF. They generally require development because they require coding and things like that. So depending on how you're using your PDFs, that may be relevant. Just to note that our support team support the basic PDF. We don't actually support advanced PDF. So typically we do, but that's a consultant related piece of work. So just to note there. All right. This is some additional information that I've included around the forms and PDF layout side of things. So I won't go through that now, but just to provide some extra information for you if that's of interest. So now we're just going to move into our processes a little bit because there are some key processes in NetSuite that I just wanted to take a little bit of time to explain. And we're looking at things like your sales orders, fulfillment, invoice customers, and your key functions for inventory around pick, pack, ship, etc. So this is just a really basic, and there's a million flow charts that depending on your business may or may not be relevant, but it's just a bit of an introduction into some of the key processes that I wanted to run through. So most of you would be doing things like sales orders, fulfilling sales orders, invoicing your customers, receiving payment, managing your AR, doing things like purchase orders and payables and things like that. So we'll take a little bit of time to go through that now. So we're now going to take a few moments to look at some of the processes, one of which is the lead to customer process. So the lead record ultimately becomes a prospect record, which then becomes a customer record, and it's one of the same in the sense that it is one record and it changes based on the stage of that record, which can either be lead, prospect or customer. Also, depending on how you have your account set up, when you generate certain transactions against the record, such as an opportunity transaction or a sales order, for example, that can also change the stage and the status of the record. So that is set up under, just briefly, sales preferences. So you can see here under setup, we have our sales preferences that are set. All right, so we're now going to go through the process of setting up our lead and converting that to a customer through a standard sales process. So we'll first go to lists, relationships, leads. Now note that if you've imported your leads, you'll have a list of leads in here. In this example, we're just going to set up a new lead from scratch. So we'll click on new. Note that the custom form defaults to my preferred form that I have set up for my leads, and you'll also note that the lead status is defaulting to the stage of lead and the status of unqualified, and that can be managed under your customer statuses section, which is under setup, sales, customer statuses. Okay, so here you can see we've got all of our statuses listed, we've got the stage that the status relates to, and we've also got the probability that relates to that status as well. Okay, so back to our lead, we're going to set up Harriet Johnson. Okay, oops, Harriet J Enterprises. Okay, and we're going to put an email address. Okay, in there. All right, so at the moment the type is individual, so we'll save that. And now we have our lead in here. You'll note that we now have a button up here called Convert. You could edit the lead record directly to change the status and to progress the lead, but I like to use the Convert option because it prompts for a number of things which you'll see. So let's click on Convert. So this is on the assumption that we've spoken to Harriet Johnson. We believe there's an opportunity there and a deal to progress, and therefore we are going to update the status of this lead and progress it. So we've clicked on Convert. You'll see that it now gives us a few options. We can update the sales rep if that's appropriate. You can update the role of the contact, so you can see that it's creating a contact against the customer record, which is what we want. And I'll just select the role to be primary. And you can see here that you also have the option to create an opportunity and to create a task. So let's do that. Let's create an opportunity, and our opportunity will be initial op, furniture sale. Okay, the status is going to be that we are in discussion. The expected close is going to be end of month, which is often the case, and I'm going to put the projected total at 25,000. Okay, you can put in any other details, and I'm going to put my contact role as the primary contact. And you can also create a task there if you wish as well. Okay, so let's submit that. Okay, and you can now see that the stage of this record has updated to the stage of prospect. The status is prospect, which is the stage, and the status is in discussion. And the probability is now 20%, and that's based on the customer statuses that we looked at just previously. Under the Relationships tab, we now have Harriet as a contact, which is great. And under the Sales tab, you'll see a dot next to Opportunities, which indicates that there's something there. And we can see the opportunity that we've now set up. So let's say we're engaged with this prospect, the opportunity is progressing. You now might want to issue a quote, so you can click on the opportunity, you can edit it, you can see that the current status is in progress, the current stage of the opportunity is in progress. Okay, and you might now want to add your items to this opportunity. So to do that, you can either click on your drop down and select list, and that's going to bring you up a list of items to select from. Alternatively, you can click on your add button and you can create new items on the fly. Alternatively, you can click on add multiple. So if you've got lots of items to add, you can add them that way, which I like to do. So let's say we're going to, and by doing the multiple, you can also see the number of items you've got on hand as well. So I'm going to add my items now. So it's going to be, let's say she's taking 10 and 10. And let's say we're selling some dining tables as well. So we might sell 6 of those. And let's say we're also looking at selling some outdoor settings. So 4 of those. And go through to my next page of items. And we might also be selling some sofas as well. So we can put 6 in there of those. Okay, so we've got our items in now. Simply click on done and you'll see that all of the items will populate there. Now you also have the option to update the projected total by clicking on this button. So remember when we created our initial opportunity, we just put $25,000 in there as a rough projected total. You can now update that by clicking on update projected, and you'll see that it now goes to a more accurate projected total of the 2321, which is the total of these items that we've now selected. You can also select your department, class and locations, which you might typically be using. So I'm going to put furniture and my location. And you can also update any forecasting relating to the opportunity here if you're using forecasting. Okay. So now we want to save this opportunity. And we've got all of our item information saved. Now, as we said, you might be at the stage where you want to issue a quote for this deal. So if you did wish to issue a quote, you can either do that by clicking on your button here and clicking on quote, or you can go to your sales tab of your opportunity, go to quotes and click on new quote. Both of those options will take you to generate a quote from your opportunity. So we're generating our quote. You'll see that it automatically populates with all of the details carried over from the opportunity. So using opportunities is a great way to help you manage your forecasting, and also it's really the click of a button to then generate a quote from your opportunity if that's relevant to your business model. Okay, so we've now got our quote. If you don't need to make any other changes, you can simply save it. Now note that we've also got a link to our opportunity transaction that is against the quote. So you can now simply save it. Okay, now if you wish to email your quote from here, you can do that again by clicking on the email option here, or going into the communication tab and emailing it from here. Okay, so you can do that, and as we went through earlier in the session, you can then opt to email it, add the attachment, etc. Okay, so once you have your quote signed and returned, depending again on your business model, you can either then click on sales order, cash sale or invoice, and process it to become a transaction. So we'll just open our record at the moment, just to note that this prospect is still a prospect in the stage of a prospect. Note that the probability is 50% now because we've created our quote against it. Okay, and if we go back into our quote, and we can either sales order it if you're using sales orders. Okay, so I'm going to save my sales order. Now here you can either change the status to pending approval or pending fulfillment, whatever your statuses are. I'm going to opt for it to be pending fulfillment. Okay, and you can now, depending, I mean, we're fast tracking it for the purpose of this training session, but you can then fulfill and bill it. I'm going to go through the process of fulfilling and billing it just so you can see the stage of the prospect change to customer. So in fact, because we've created our sales order already, if we refresh this record, you should see prospect change to customer, and you can see that there. And you can see that the status is now a stage of customer with a status of closed won. Okay. You can also see under the sales tab, you've got your quote transaction and you've also got your sales order transaction with a status of pending fulfillment. If we go back and we fulfill our sales order, we can move it straight to shipped and save it. And we can then also invoice it. Okay, we can click on bill to create an invoice. All right, and again, all of the same information flows through. We can save it. And going back to our customer record, if we just refresh this again, you can see that under our sales tab, we now also have a record of the item fulfillment and we also have a record of the invoice. Okay, you've got your opportunity here from earlier. Now also, if you wanted to just check the status of, say, your quote, which was in progress earlier, I think, you can now see that it's fully processed, okay, because we've gone through the stage of processing the transactions. We're now going to take a couple of minutes to look at purchasing in NetSuite. Purchasing is a fairly fundamental part of NetSuite. So whilst we won't go into too much detail, I just wanted to touch on the basics of purchasing and also go through the process of creating a purchase order in NetSuite. Okay. So I'll first just take a moment to go through the process of purchase requests via the self-service employee centre and what that process looks like in terms of purchase approvers, and then we'll jump into creating some purchase orders. Okay. These are just some screenshots that I've taken because I've toggled between a few different accounts to do this. So this is just to give you an idea of what both the employee requesting the purchase and the purchase approver sees. Okay. So when you have your employee with just their employee centre basic access, this is typically the sort of login that they'll see, and you can see it's fairly simplified. It doesn't have a lot of features available to the employee centre login, but you'll see under the purchasers portlet there's an enter purchase request. So they would simply click on that enter purchase request, which would then take them to a screen similar to this. So this is a purchase request form, similar to a purchase order. They would pick their supplier, fill in the details, pick any items, etc. And then once that's done, they would save the purchase request. Now you'll note that once the purchase request has been saved, the status on the purchase request is pending supervisor approval. You'll see that it's also got a purchase order number associated with it. Then next, an automated email is sent to the purchase approver via NetSuite. So this is just an example of what that email looks like. It's very basic. So the employee that has requested the purchase, you'll see that on their dashboard it's now showing that purchase order and it's showing the status. It also shows the amount. That's just been chopped off in this screenshot, but yes, they'll basically see the status of any purchases that they've requested. Okay, so now that we've taken a look at what the process is from the employee that is requesting the purchase, I just want to take a moment to jump into the employee record so you can understand where those settings are set, and then we will take a look at what the approver sees. So just to jump into the employee record, you would go to Lists, Employees, Employees. Okay, now the employee that we were just going through that process of raising the request from was this record, which is just a variation of me for test purposes. So we'll click on Edit. Okay, now this is an employee record, obviously. It's defaulting to my standard employee form. Obviously, there's key information that needs to be included on an employee record, things like emails, supervisor, etc. We won't go into all those details now, but I do just want to show you on the Human Resources tab down here. We have an expense and purchasing section. You can see that here is where we set our limits and approvers for expenses and purchases. Okay, so in terms of purchases, the purchase limit set for this employee is $1,000, which basically means that they can submit a purchase request for under $1,000 and that will automatically be approved. But if the purchase exceeds $1,000, then the purchase approver will be notified to approve the purchase and ultimately so that it can be a purchase order and be sent. Okay, the purchase approval limit is another amount where this employee has the ability to approve purchases where they are specified as such. But for the purpose of what we're looking at today, we're just looking at the purchase limit of $1,000 and the purchase approver. Okay, so that's where that is set. So now we will take a look at what the purchase approver sees when they get their notification. Okay. All right, so we're now back in the screen of the purchase approver. You can see in the reminders portlet that there is the purchase request to approve in the top left. And now as the supervisor or approver, I can click on that and I'll see that I've got this purchase request here. Okay, so if I open that, you've got the option to approve the purchase order here, and then as the approver or the supervisor, you can then send it and do whatever you need with it after that fact. So that's just to let you know the difference between purchase requests and purchase and creating a purchase order from scratch. Now I've got a couple of flow charts in here just to outline the basic purchase process. We've got a very basic version, and we've got a version that shows you the typical process when you have advanced receiving enabled, which most of you probably will. I'll just touch on it briefly, but it's just to give the purchasing process, I guess, context for you. So, so here you can either do your purchase request or create your PO. You can also do your POs via order items, which I'll quickly show you. So just on purchase orders, they are a transaction. They're listed here under purchases. So here you can list all your purchase orders. You can do a search on purchase orders. You can go into order items and you can see you can receive orders, and you've got some other options here. But for the purpose of just showing you order items, because this is quite an important one, depending on how you've got your items set up with all your reorder points and locations, etc., this will bring you to a list of all of the items that are ready or that are indicating they need to be ordered. You can see here we've got our items in terms of their availability, any that are on back order, what our reorder point is that is set based against the item record that we looked at earlier, and our preferred stock level. So where you're dealing with lots of stock, this is a really, really useful option to use to make sure that you can keep on top of your stock control. You can order items based on location. So if I only wanted to order items for my South Yarra location, you'll see it immediately gives me just a reduced list of items that are coming up to be ordered there. You can also do it by supplier filtering as well, if you're just wanting to do order items with a particular supplier. You'll see it just gives you a reduced list here. Okay, you also have the ability to overwrite things like your quantity and rates if that's relevant to you. Okay, so order items is a really good one for any purchasing role to be taking advantage of. Likewise, receive orders is a good one as well when you're receiving orders in bulk. So just going back to our flowchart, so you create your PO either manually or using the order items option. You email your PO to your supplier typically. You then receive your stock. You receive your bill and you bill your purchase order. So that is, so if we go into purchase orders and list, I'm just going to leave that. So I'm just going in to look at the current purchase orders that we've got in the system. And hopefully I've got some that are pending bill, which I do. You'll see this is just a list of my purchase orders, and it's defaulting to a status of open because I just want to look at the ones. I don't want to look at every purchase order I've ever raised in the system. I just want to look at ones that are still, that have an in progress status or something that needs to be dealt with. Let's do this one actually, pending supervisor approval, because this one we can approve as the supervisor. Okay, let's say our goods have now come in. You receive your purchase order. Okay, and that is where you note the date that you received your purchase order, your goods, etc. Okay, here we've got our landed costs information as well. Then you can either save, or if you've got your bill and you're ready to bill it, you can save and bill. So you have the options there. Then to save and bill. Okay, you put your bill number in, so whatever that is. Oops, so field help. Oops. There's our bill number. You can put any other bill information that you need. You'll note that in your sub tabs, you've got, you're defaulting to items, because typically where you're dealing with stock, you want this to default to items as opposed to expenses. Okay, so that's on the basis that your purchase order had the items selected on it, and then you save your bill. Oops, you cannot, oh, it's because I think I accidentally hit the vendor record. Here we go. That's defaulted now to the correct supplier, I think. Let's try again. Okay, so now we've got our bill. Now, just going back to that concept of related records, you can see that you've got your purchase order that it's related to there. So if I open that back up in another screen, you'll see now that the status up here has changed to fully billed, okay? And if you want to look at your purchase order system information, you can see that you received, that you billed, etc. Okay? And your related records here, you've got your item receipt record, and you've got your bill as well, all right? So then from an AP perspective, you would make your payments, which you can do a number of different ways in terms of bill payments and pay bills, and email remittance. So that's just a really basic overview of how the purchasing piece ties together, okay? So just to go into the sales order process as well. Now, again, depending on your sales process, you may be raising opportunities and quotes. This is really just to demonstrate the sales order process. So assuming that you may have done a quote and that's been signed by a customer, depending on your business model, and then you're creating a sales order, this is just demonstrating the sale process, how the order is processed internally. So typically you've got your sales order, you print your picking tickets, you pick and pack, so your warehouse picks and packs, you fulfill your orders, and you bill your sales order, okay? And even though it's bill sales order, the term is always invoice, okay, in terms of the transaction name in the system. The sales orders are ultimately used to manage your back orders, handle multiple shipments, and manage approvals. So if you didn't need to do that, you would just create a cash sale or invoice. But where you're dealing with stock, that is why we use sales orders. And they're basically an internal transaction, generally not customer facing, to let you manage all of that. Okay. And then there's a more advanced flow chart that captures the advanced shipping, which you can look at when I make this available with all of the content. With financials, there's no separate posting to the general ledger. When you save a transaction, it automatically updates the sub ledger, so your AP, your AR, inventory detail, etc., and the general ledger. We strongly recommend keeping the posting date and period within the same period. Now, what I mean by that, and if we just go back to our bill, is you'll see, edit. Okay, if we're looking at our bill, you'll see I've got a date here and I've got a posting period. If you change the posting period for whatever reason, or if there's a discrepancy between the period that you're showing in the date, so for example, you know, you might think, oh, I'll backdate this, so I'll put it back into March. That can create all sorts of issues in terms of end month BAS reporting, and conversely, putting it in a forward month can create all sorts of issues, particularly around your P&L and things like that as well. So we always strongly suggest that you, for as much as possible, ensure your posting period is the same or within the same period as whatever you've nominated on the actual date of the transaction. When you enter a bill, the transaction date will also be the BAS reporting date, so don't backdate into a prior period. The financial periods can be closed and reopened if required. So closing periods is a good practice to get into, and you can always open them if you need to. Now, accounting, manage accounting periods. So here you've got your manage accounting periods. Yeah, so here you can see you've got your accounting period set up, and this is where you can open and close your periods, and it prompts you to kind of, when you're closing a financial period, the key checks that you need to do. And we've got some really good support articles around that if that's relevant for you, just to show you where that is. A couple of other things. So for journals, the menu path is transactions, financial, make journal entries. Again, your financial people should know this, but just including some of the key takeouts. So transactions, financial, you've got make your journal entries there, so you can list them, you can search them. If you're using budgets, you can set up your budgets here from a financial perspective, and you can copy your budgets there. Also, for the financial role in the business, you can do your memorized transactions, which is a great way to automate things like reoccurring sales orders, invoicing, etc. So I don't know if I've got any set up in this demo account. I do have one. So in this instance, this was just a test example that I did because I was demonstrating that I have a reoccurring bill from our IT provider, being Adrian Networking, and basically I set it up as a memorized transaction, so I didn't have to create the bill from scratch every time we received it, because it always comes in at the same time for the same amount. So it's a good way to streamline your processes and to save time. So in that instance, I would enter it, and it automatically prompts me. You can see I've got it set up there in terms of the expenses, etc. So memorized transactions is a really good one for financial processing. All right, now just on financials, because this isn't about financials and we've still got a fair bit to get through, we do have a financials webinar in our support hub, and we also have a really comprehensive 4-hour financials training session that has been produced if you want to get more around the financials training, because there is a lot around financials if that's relevant to you or someone in your business. All right, so moving on to users and licenses, just a couple of things I wanted to touch on here. You have to have users set up as employees. And I just want to also clarify, an employee is a record of the employee. A user is where the employee has a license to access NetSuite. And so let's take a look at that. So if we go lists, employees, and we look at our employees, here's our employees listed. Now, if we look at my record, now again, you can change your view, you can customize your view to look at the fields of information on the employee record that are relevant to you. In this instance, I want to see login access. So this is telling me that of all of my employees set up, these ones don't have login access, and these 2 employees do, so myself and my other test employee. Okay, so if we go into my employee record, again, the concept of forms. So you can see I've got a few different form options here. We've got a standard employee form, we've got a J-curve payroll employee form, and this was another form I did. I customized to exclude the payroll tab so that users in this dummy business could look at an employee record in a fair amount of detail without seeing the payroll information. So that was a custom form I did in another training session to demonstrate that. But in this instance, we're just going to go to the standard employee form just to show you some of the key things we need to look at here. So email is mandatory. You obviously need an email address in order to be able to log into NetSuite. You should always have a supervisor, not a good example here, but in this instance, I am my own. So always have a supervisor allocated. And then if we go into human resources, if they are a sales rep, one thing to note, you would tick that here. And if they are a support rep, you would tick that there. And that then gives them the option to do and see certain things in the system as well, just as a side note. But what we want to look at the moment is the access tab, okay? Because this is where you control what the employee can see or do. So the first thing is that Give Access assigns a NetSuite license to this employee, okay? Now, you can either give them a manual password that you then hand to them. You can tick for them to change password when they next log in. You can nominate to send them a new access notification email from NetSuite when you're setting them up. But basically, Give Access needs to be checked in order for them to access NetSuite, okay? Now here you can see I've got a number of roles listed and the roles, and we'll just go into that. If we go into setup, users roles and manage roles. So I'll just open this at the same time. All right, and these are all of the roles that are available in NetSuite to assign to employees. Now you can see there's a range of standard roles that you should have in your account, and then you can see where we've customized certain roles that we've needed to customize, okay? Talking about centers, which I talked about at the beginning of the training session, here you can see some of the main centers. So you've got if I just sort by center type, showing that sort option, you've got, your main centers are vendor, support, sales, partner, marketing, exec, classic, which is what I'm in today, and accounting center, okay? So roles have to have a center. And this is where all of your roles can be found. If roles, if you need to set a role to inactive, then by ticking the show inactive, you can make them inactive if they're no longer relevant, okay? And then the users will no longer have those roles available to them. Okay, so just to look at a role in a bit more detail, let's have a look. What do we want to look at? I might just go into this test role that I've done here, just to give you a bit of an overview of what a role is. So you can do all sorts of settings on a role and then assign the role to a user, and it basically, when they log in that role, they will be able to do and see things in NetSuite based on what you've set here. You've got permissions where you can set permissions on transactions, reports, lists, setup and custom records. You've got your restrictions tab. You've got forms. So this is where you can do things like, set your preferred forms, etc. here, which you can also do at the form level. But this is basically showing what they can and can't access in terms of forms, transactions, items. So there's a whole heap of stuff in here in terms of your role settings. Your J-Curve or NetSuite account will have standard roles, which will generally address the typical users in your organization, but certainly fine-tuning roles and customizing versions of roles, this is where you do it. So that's just to give you a bit of an introduction into roles, where they are, and how you might manage them. Again, we have lots of articles on setting up roles and customizing roles in our support base. So just going back, we were looking at our employee record, which is me here. So here you can see these are the roles that I've been allocated. And then when I go into my, can't see it at the moment, but when I go into my view all roles, I can see all of those roles assigned to me within this account, okay? Global permissions just lets you set global permissions for the employee. So this is also where you set things like access to your NetSuite app and things like that as well. All right, so back to our slide. So we've talked through the access tab, giving access, assigning roles. If you want to check your license availability, so how many user licenses your account has that you can assign to employees, you can do that via Setup Company View Billing Information. So I'll just take you there briefly. So Setup Company and View Billing Information is here. All right, now that will show you full licensed users. You can see here the current provision quantity is 2 and the current used quantity is 1, okay, because it's just assigned to me at the moment. But that is where you would see how many users you've got, okay. You can also see things like your add-on modules, you can see your provisioning history and things like that as well, and component usage in here. Typically, that's more of an admin function if that relates to you. All right, now if you want to check which users have which roles, you can go to Setup, Users Roles and Manage Users. So we'll just do that, Manage Users. Okay, you can sort by role, etc. So here you can see, I mean, if you had multiple employees, they would all be here and you would see what roles they have. The difference between inactivating versus terminating an employee. So to remove access for an employee, you simply uncheck the Give Access box. That frees up the license for reallocation to another employee. And to inactivate, you do that via List Employees. So if you're inactivating an employee, that is where you do it, okay? So, and I think we went through that earlier. I think we've touched on some of this already. So we've gone through the roles, we've talked about the centres, we've touched on the fact that administrator uses a classic centre. If you're using, if you're a system admin, it's a good idea to give yourself other key roles and to see differences between roles. And this is quite a handy one. You do that via Setup, Users Roles and Show Role Differences. So Setup, Users Role and Show Role Differences. So if, for example, you had a sales manager role, I think we've got one in here as a J-curve, let's just say J-curve sales manager versus J-curve salesperson, and you wanted to see the difference between those two roles and what they can see and do, you just select that there, and I've ticked on only show differences, so I don't want to look at every single feature of every single setting of the role. I just want to look at what's different, and click on show. You can see that it's now showing all of the different permissions where there's a variation between the sales manager role and the salesperson role. So that can be helpful if, say, for example, a salesperson can't do or see something and you're the sales manager and you want to understand, you know, what the variations between the role might be, and then modify the role accordingly if that's appropriate. All right, just a tip there, if a user doesn't have the ability to export or email a saved search, often it's because they don't have the perform search permission enabled on their role, and that's just a direction to updating that because that does come up from time to time. Okay, just a very quick one and moving right along. So importing data and ensuring data integrity. So typically where you might import data is if you are importing leads, for example, or if you've got lots of items in your system and you want to do a price update. They are some typical examples of where this is relevant. If you wanted to update your items, for example, you would do an export of your items. So just very quickly, lists, accounting items. You would work out the fields that you want to export, and then here is where you do a CSV export. So whenever we're talking about importing and exporting, usually work in CSV format. Just on that though, we've got an option to export in Excel as well and some other options here. But you would export it and you would then check your CSV contents. You would always include your internal IDs. That's where the internal IDs are very important. Delete things that don't apply in terms of your spreadsheet, remove any blank columns, don't change any headings if you can avoid it because NetSuite will auto map. and always just double check the integrity of your data. Now, if you do happen to have multiple tabs open on your CSV, the importer will just look to the tab that you have in the system. Okay, so I'll just quickly take you to importing a CSV file, just so you're aware of where that is. So that is setup, import, export, and import CSV records. We don't have time to go through an import, but I'll just quickly show you. So import type, so if you were doing items, you would select items, but you can see you've got a range of options there. Then you have a record type, so depending on what you're updating, you would probably select inventory item or whatever's relevant to what it is that you're updating. You select your file and then you get taken through the prompts to upload your file. Okay, so that's just a very brief introduction to importing files. All right, just our tip around importing files is always keep a file copy of what the old value was. So if you make a mistake, you can go back and correct it. Very important, because if you overwrite pricing, for example, and then you need to go back and undo something, it can get very tricky. We're now going to go into reports, saved searches, and analytics. And again, just an introduction to show you some of the things that you can do here. So going into our NetSuite account, you can access your reports and save searches a few different ways. So if you click on the reports main menu, that will take you to this window here, which basically takes you to your save searches as well. Okay, and you can see those here. You can expand or collapse to look into the various options that are within this window, or you can simply use the menu to go to what it is that you're looking at. So for reports, we just want to, you can see NetSuite comes with hundreds of pre-built reports. So typically around things like financial reporting, sales reporting, inventory reporting, there's a lot of really good reports in NetSuite already. So often there's a report that has the information that you need. Some of the key reports are going to be things like under financial, you've got your profit and loss. You can also access your chart of accounts there. Under purchases, you can look at purchases by supplier, by item, etc. Under inventory, you can look at things like your inventory profitability. You can look at your current inventory snapshot. You can do inventory valuations, etc. You've then got your receivables and payables. So you've got your supplier payables, so AP aging and receivables, your AR aging. And then once you're in these reports, you can filter them in different ways. So sales by customer, sales by sales rep, etc. So again, this isn't a session on reporting as such, but just to give you an introduction, I'll take you into one or two of them. So, okay, so we've just gone into sales by sales rep summary. You can see that I'm getting a window that says no data available. That's because it's defaulting to the current month, all right? So if I wanted to look at sales by sales rep, let's say for this fiscal year, I can select this field. Now here's where you can type, if I type THI for this fiscal. So this is just to show you the intuitive option here. It will automatically reduce my options down to whatever matches this F. So I want to look at this fiscal year to date. Okay, you'll see that automatically updates the from and to date ranges. And then you've got options to view the data different ways. So you can see, and I'll just show you the basic view here first. So if we refresh that, we should see some data, which we do. Okay, so we can now see our sales by sales rep summary, and at the moment we've got columns by month. So you can see month here. Now, if I wanted to look at this by location, for example, you can select location, refresh it, and we've now moved away from the sales in a month view to location. Okay, and we've got our Artarmon, our South Yarra, and our Sydney head office, and we've got our sales reps, just total amounts for the fiscal period based on location. Okay. You can conversely do that by class, department, etc. All right. When you're in reports, you have the options to view the report a few different ways. This is a collapse and expand option. So if you wanted to expand it to look into the detail, you can. It's probably not a good example. I might just go back to my month view. Okay, so if we, don't know if this is the right report to do this. No. Oh, there we are, just to show collapse and expand. At the moment, I've collapsed it. So everything, so this is basically showing you that all of these employees report up to me. And so when we're collapsing it, we're just looking at the top level of information. And that's just a principle when you're using reporting that you come across whatever report you're in. I think I created one, or I opened one other report. Yeah, so this is an AR aging summary. So if, it's probably not the best example either, AP aging summary. Let me go into the P&L just to show you. So financial P&L. Okay, so if we expand here, you'll see, now because it's a test account, I don't have a massive P&L. And then if we collapse there, we can collapse and collapse again. So it just gives us a very top level of information. Okay, and again, if you wanted to look at your P&L by period, you can select that here. Okay, so you can also do things in reports like customize, and you can do things like drop your decimals if that's relevant. So under edit columns, you can drop decimals. So, and then if we wanted to preview that, you can do a whole heap of things in your reports. You can see now that that's dropped all of the decimals off the amounts that we're showing. So you can customize your reports a fair bit. Just to show you that that's where they are. There's a whole heap of them there to take advantage of. We also have material in our support hub, and obviously NetSuite has a range of material to assist you with using reports in NetSuite. So next we'll go into saved searches, because saved searches are a big part of taking advantage of NetSuite to get the business intelligence that you need. So saved searches are considered part of the report section of your NetSuite account. In terms of saved searches, you can either create a new search here, you can go into your existing saved searches, you can also look at which searches you have scheduled, and you can go to them via the reports tab as well. So here you can see you've got your saved searches. So these are certain standard ones as well as some that I've produced, and you can click on all saved searches to see all of them. So you can access your saved searches a few different ways. So if you are in a transaction, for example, so let's say you're in your sales orders and you want to customize your view. Oh, I think, sorry, I meant to do that a different way. Yeah, much the same. But if we go transaction sales and we're in sales orders and you click on search, that immediately takes you to a transaction search that is based on sales order. And you can see here with the filter, type equals sales order. So it can be a good way to do a search on the fly. And it is a good way to immediately filter based on what it is that you're wanting to see. Now, as an alternative to that, if you were in saved searches and you click on new saved search, you'll see that you have all of these search types to contend with. So often going through the menu path of what it is that you're wanting to search is a good way to immediately narrow the search down to what it is that you're wanting to search on. But if I wanted to do a sales order search in here, I could go to transaction, because a sales order is a type of transaction. You can see here, I would then select type and any of, and here you would tick sales order and set. Okay, so doing it from scratch is just a little bit more work in terms of getting to that basic stage of the type of search that you want. So criteria basically lets you set the criteria of the search that you're looking at. And I've got a couple of saved searches open just in the interest of time to take you to. And results is then saying, okay, these are the specific results of the criteria that I want to see. Okay, so let's go into an example. All right. So this is a saved search that I've already produced. it's looking at activities already, and you can see that the status is not completed because I just want to look at activities that are highlighted to me that need to happen or that need to be actioned in some way. So here the criteria is status is not complete, okay, and that's where I've got that. And then I want to also further look at the criteria where they're just assigned to me. So if I wanted to look at them for other sales reps in my team, for example, I could select specific people, or I could just say any of, but that is where you set it. Now, bearing in mind we're then looking at activities, I've then come up with a list of the results that I want to look at. So I want to look at the company that the activity relates to. I want to look at the title of the activity to help give me an idea of what the activity is about. I want to look at the type. So is it a phone call? Is it an event? Is it a task? I want to look at the date. I want to look at the time, the status, the priority, and who it's assigned to. So just while we're in here, you can also put preferences around the way the results are sorted. So if you wanted to sort it by date, you could do that here just by typing D for date, and you can do ascending or descending depending on what's relevant to you. You can also put highlighting in your saved searches so that you can flag certain things. You can put filters on your saved searches to basically further let you filter within the saved search, and I'll show you an example of that. So if I wanted to put a filter in of who it was assigned to, I would put show in filter region, and now we can just look at that difference. You can also do things like set the audience, set the roles, and importantly, you can schedule emails to send from saved searches as well. So if I wanted to send this saved search to George in my team, I could add him there. You can schedule them to send automatically on particular days, on particular schedules, etc. Okay, so let's just save as. Oh, now an important thing with save searches is to make sure you don't override an existing save search. You should always do save as. All right, and you can now see this is still the same save search, but because I put the filter in to look at the employees, I can filter it by employees. Now here, I'm just looking at activities to myself and George. Imagine this is an expanded list. If I just wanted to look at George, I can simply click on him, and now I'll just see the results that relate to George, okay? So I'll just go into another example of a saved search. So this is a saved search that I've done earlier. This is a slightly more advanced saved search, but just to show you some of the things that are possible with saved searches. This is a saved search where we're wanting to look at overdue invoices and also create a new note against the invoices. So let's say I'm doing some debt collection and I want to record notes on these debtors as I go. This would allow me to do that. So with this search, we're looking at the criteria being type equals invoice. We only want to look at the status of invoices that is open. So if an invoice were paid in full, that means it's not going to appear on this search. We just want to look at invoices that have a status of open. Mainline is true. Now, mainline is true or mainline is false basically refers to whether you're looking at the main line of the transaction or the detail of the transaction. And what I mean by that, I'll just open a invoice if I've got one handy. Okay, so the main line is true would just give us this information that is in the main section of the invoice. Okay, if it was main line is false, it would show the details. So transaction by line item essentially. Okay, so that is quite a key part of using saved searches depending on what you want to look at. So if you're looking at you know, item related saved searches, for example, or transaction saved searches versus customer saved searches, that may vary. Okay, so going back to this saved search, we've got mainline is true, and we also want to look at days overdue is between 3 and 30. Okay, so we've set that so that we're just looking at the invoices that are open, we're just looking at the main line of the invoice, and we're looking at where the days overdue fall between 3 and 30 days. okay? Then in the results, now this is probably a more advanced save search because we are using some formulas here to get the specific information we need, but it's also just to demonstrate the sorts of things that are possible with save searches. The fields that we're looking at are name, document number, amount, amount paid, amount remaining, due date, days overdue, and then we've got our formulas in there to give us the additional columns that we want, and we've labeled, so you can see here this formula that's giving me this particular date that I've renamed or relabeled as days stale, so it makes sense when we look at the save search. Now, additionally with save searches, available for reminders will mean that the save search appears as an option in your reminders portlet. Available as sublist view, you've got available for dashboard view. If you are creating a save search that you want others in your business to see, you would tick it as public typically, but that can also all be managed in the audience and the roles tabs as well. Okay, so let's just save and run that. And we can now see we didn't relabel the formula text, so that's just giving us the new note option. And we've got our days stale here because I haven't updated this test account in a while. Now, in this example, and if you want more details around this particular save search, just let me know and I can provide them to you. But I can now create a new note that will be linked to the invoice transaction. So I might say chased up debt, paying Monday, whatever the case may be. The type, it was a call or phone call. The direction was outgoing and save. You can just copy and paste that if you don't have any more to add, and save. And now I've created a new note against this invoice 123. Now, if we open it, hopefully we will see that new note. So under communication, user notes, and there's the note that I just created, okay, just to relate that back. So you can do some really fantastic things with save searches, emailing them, scheduling them to send to key people in your business. They're all really helpful things to do. Oh, one other thing I wanted to touch on with save searches was the joining records. So I'll just go into a more simple save search. So again, if I say search AH, let's do opportunities to close or quotes open. Actually, you can also click on show more items to see more. So I might just do this one and edit it directly. Okay, so in this instance, we're looking at type is quote. The status is any that are open or expired because we don't want to look at quotes that have been closed, for example. We're just looking at the main line of information. We're also excluding tax line and shipping line because they can be lines that can complicate your search. And if they're not relevant and you don't need to see them, it's a good idea to set them as false. And that's fairly standard with save searches. So what I wanted to show you, so if we go into results as an example, and you look at your results, all of these fields are fields that sit directly on the record that we're looking at, which is the quote, okay? When you get to the bottom, some of you may have noticed that when you scroll through all of your fields, of which there are usually a fair few, you'll come down to fields that have 3 dots at the end of them. And these are basically joining fields. And what they represent are fields of data that are somehow related to the primary record or transaction that you're looking at, okay? So an example of that might be, let's say customer fields. So at the moment, we're looking at the quote transaction, but I might want to include some information on this save search that is from the customer record relating to the quote. So the customer who we've got the quote allocated to. So here I can select customer field and you'll see now it's giving me access to a whole heap of additional fields that are available from the customer record. So they're called, so joining fields, you know, secondary fields, there's a few different names floating around for them, but basically they represent related fields of data that you can select to further improve your saved searches in terms of the results that you're looking at. All right, so that is saved searches. And just quickly, for those of you that haven't looked at analytics, analytics is a fairly new part to NetSuite that was introduced a few releases ago. To access analytics, you do so via the top main menu. You've got recently opened My Workbooks. So workbooks is the term that we use for any workbooks generated in analytics. So if you think about it, you've got your reports, you've got your saved searches, and you've got workbooks via the Suite Analytics section. So and they are a little bit different, and I'll just briefly show you one to introduce you to those. So My Workbooks is any workbooks that I've created, shared with me, or any workbooks that any other users may have shared with me. Employee workbooks are other employee workbooks, and standard workbooks are a set of standard workbooks that NetSuite make available within analytics. And you can see there are standard workbooks for purchases, for sales, both sales invoiced and sales ordered, system notes, transaction detail, etc. So if you looked at sales ordered, for example, and you can see here the root record is sales ordered. So it's just a way of NetSuite kind of pulling key data together as a starting point for you to then, you know, use as a platform to produce your workbook. So let's look at a sales ordered workbook as an example. Now, okay, so you'll see this has come up. So they do look a little bit different. You'll see adding criteria will help to load your data faster. Just tick that. Yep. Now, at the moment, we're looking at sales orders, and it's defaulting to date on or after the same day of last fiscal year. So here's where you can change your date range. So I might just want to look at on or after start of this fiscal year. Let's just have a look. Quarter. If I filter by quarter, I can just see quarters. Start of fiscal quarter before last, for example. Okay, and apply, because I'm not sure how up to date my data is. You can see here that we've currently got 21 records. Okay, now you can see it's reduced to 1 of 9 records. So we're just looking at 9 records. Now, worth noting, the 9 records, 1 of 9 pages, I should say, because this is a sales order workbook. It's looking at the line level of the transaction. You can see that because you'll see this sales order is repeated here, and just some guidance around using workbooks. If it's foreign to you or you're unsure, I always find a really good way of familiarizing is by opening a transaction and looking at that transaction against your workbook to sort of understand what it is that you're looking at. So if we go to sales order, for example, we can see we've got all of these items on the sales order, and you can see that they are all listed there. Okay, so the sales ordered standard workbook is immediately looking at sales orders, and it's and the blue indicates the actual fields of data that it's looking at from the sales order. Okay, and you can see that they're replicated here. You can drag the fields of data around, you can click on these, and you can do all sorts of things in terms of sorting, removing, shifting, etc. You can add criteria. So some of the principles are similar to, I guess, that of saved searches in terms of, you know, criteria, etc. Now, you'll see also in these standard workbooks, you've got some standard options. So you can look at this data set immediately by sales by item, sales by customer, sales by sales rep, sales over time. The main thing about workbooks is you can create charts and pivots sort of very easily. And I'll show you another one to kind of demonstrate that. These are some standard ones that are in here. So if we click on sales by sales rep or sales by customer, for example, we are looking at the customer, we're looking at the sales rep, we're looking at the transaction, and then it's breaking it down by quarter. So here you can change the layout. So if I don't want to see the sales rep, for example, I can just trash that and refresh it, and you'll see the sales rep drops off. My pivot. Yep. If you don't want to see it by quarter, you can change that via the columns. You can change your measures just by clicking on the dots, and you can change all sorts of, you can reformat. There's a whole heap of stuff in here. We've done a session specifically on workbooks to kind of introduce you to workbooks in a lot more detail, but they are a fantastic addition to NetSuite, I think, and you can do some really cool things with them. So I'll just show you, I've got another workbook open. So this was a workbook that wasn't a standard workbook. I guess the key thing to note about workbooks is you've got a data set. So the data set is dictated by your criteria and, and the fields of data that you're choosing to look at. And then the view of that data you can look at via pivot or via chart. You can create new ones. So if you want to create a different version of a chart based on this data set, you can do that. And then, of course, this is all available to go onto your dashboard as well. Okay, but have a play around with the analytics section, because you can generate some really awesome business intelligence from this area of NetSuite. So now we're going to move into the dashboard section of today's presentation. If we go to our dashboard, play around with the layout options that work for you. What we want to do now is go into personalize our dashboard. I actually prefer that layout for me, so I'll go back to that. Reminders we touched on. When you go into personalize, basically it will give you this personalized dashboard box at the top. You've got a whole heap of standard content that you can bring into your dashboard. You've got suite apps which you can bring in if that's relevant to you, and then a summary of the ones that you're currently using. So this has changed a little bit, I think, since the last release or the one before that. You can see you've got analytics in here, and you'll see the number 10, and that basically means that you can bring in up to 10 analytics workbooks or charts or whatever it is that you want to see from analytics into your dashboard. Now, I just clicked on analytics. You can see it's now brought in this analytics portlet, and you can see the number dropped from 10 till 9, telling me that I've got 9 left. So if I want to set up this analytics portlet, okay, I would simply click on set up, and I might go to, what was that search that we were looking at before? I think it was top customers. I'll go to my chart portlet, so you can filter by whether they're pivots or charts. And I might just, no, it's not that. Customer sales 1920. So I'll click on that. You can choose whether you want it to be a short view, a medium view, or a tall view, and then save. Analytics can take a moment to load. Okay, and you'll see now that I can see my top 10 customers for the financial year 1920 in my dashboard. You can also drag your content around, and you can expand and collapse it. So just by clicking on it, you can see I've expanded it. So where you do have a fair bit on your dashboard, that can be really helpful to help you manage your visual real estate, and you can drag it down. So if this isn't the most important thing to me, I can drag it down, and you can see now the one underneath it being my activities has appeared there, and I've put it in that next position. Okay, so you've got your analytics, you've got a whole heap of things here. You can drag in your calendar, depending on how you want to look at your activities. We did talk about your activities overview earlier, but you can also drag, do it like in this instance. I've got an activities save search, which looks at my phone calls, tasks, and events all in the one view. You've got KPI meters and KPI scorecards. So I think I've got one of those. I've got my KPIs down here. So if I wanted to, so you can either drag one in. So if I drag in my scorecard, hang on, let's just use the one that I've already got down there. If you want to change the KPIs that you're looking at, you can simply click on Set Up, and you've got a range of standard KPIs or custom KPIs that you may have set up that you can add into your KPI. And you can see here, I've just got some basic ones in here. You can set the range that you're looking at. So in this instance, I want to look at the current month and compare it to last month. Okay, that's where you change those settings. So if you want to do it, you know, last year versus, you know, this year, you can change them all there. You've got shortcuts, which can be a good one to use where you've got lots of saved searches, for example, that you want to access quickly. And you can put other information into your dashboard as well. So a thing to note around the new release, which I've got in another slide, NetSuite provide 2 new releases a year of their software, and the new release portlet just basically gives you a window into their next new release, so that you can look at the release notes, what's coming up, any videos that they've got around it, etc. So it does take up a bit of space, so I tend to not include it. Trend graphs, you've got tasks. If you want to bring custom search information into your dashboard, you can do that. So at the moment, you can see we've got 5 available to bring in. So if I bring in my custom search there, and let's say I want to add in that 30-day one. Now, by using my wildcard and typing %30, I'm bringing up that saved search that we looked at earlier. Okay, so I'll pop that there. And that is now giving me the overdue invoices with the 30-day range and the relevant information. You have the ability to edit, etc. Okay, so dashboards are really easy to set up. They've become easier to set up in my view. You can also do things like publish a set dashboard to a team. So sales are a good one. You can come up with a standard sales dashboard and publish it to the sales team, and then you can set what they can update if you want them to be able to change it around, or if you want it to be set without them being able to change it. You can do all those sorts of things as well. And I've included some information around that. Publishing dashboards here. You can also do it from down here, publish dashboard list, and that takes you to publishing dashboards. Just some other things to know. So you've got 2 types of user licenses, the full access user, and there's the employee center, which is limited, where your employees can just do things like timesheets, enter expenses, and set reminders, etc. Create their purchase requests, which we went through earlier. NetSuite have 2 software releases a year, and we just looked at the release preview portlet. It can be a great way of testing out any customizations without compromising your production account. So if you're wanting to sort of look at making some changes to your account, and you've got a preview account which NetSuite have made available to you, do it in there. It will have your data. Generally, it's a snapshot of your data taken fairly recently. I think it may have a few months of data in there, not the whole data set, I don't think. And then you can test things without compromising your production account. Your NetSuite account number, you can actually see that in your URL as well. So there's my NetSuite account number there, but you can also view it via company information. Just a slide on system security features. You've obviously got your username and password. You've got your change password option down here. You can change your email down here. You've got security questions, so which can be set here as well. Update your security questions. So these are just all sort of system security features that NetSuite makes available. 2-factor authentication is something that was rolled out not so long ago, which provides a second level of security. So you can use typically your phone or an authenticator app to use 2FA. Where you do have more privileged roles, it can be mandatory, and you can control that via roles and employee record as well. Role restrictions, which we went through to let you manage what users can see and do. And you can also add IP address restrictions, which is relevant given a lot of us are now working from home. That's just a slide on Suite Apps and Bundles, just where the terminology comes up. Bundles, it's the technical term for applications developed within NetSuite, and it's a way of getting customizations and solutions into your account. And then there's a range of Suite Apps that are native NetSuite applications developed by third-party software vendors that you may come across as well. Just a note on third-party products and J-curve accounts, they won't always work with J-curve accounts, so make sure you speak with your account manager if you're looking at a third-party product and want to make sure that it works with your J-curve account. So, shortcuts and tips. Field help. I don't think we touched on that yet, but field help is a really good one. Basically, if you hover over any field, it will provide you with an explanation of what that field is about. Okay, so yeah, it's a good one to know to help you understand if you're looking at a field and you're not sure what it is. Be aware that field help is there. We've talked about the wildcard. We've talked about using filters. We looked at being able to shortcut when you're searching for things in a date range or period, for example, but there are some common ones that you can use. You can do calculations directly within a field. So for example, if you're in a supplier bill, you can calculate the exchange rate. So we don't have time to do that now, but you can do things like that as well. Just a note, when two people try and edit or save a record at the same time, whoever hits save first is the record that will get saved. And when the second person goes to save the record, it will flag to them that the record has changed and the information will be lost. So just be aware of that. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen. Forgot password option is available on your dashboard. Use the JCS Support Hub and NetSuite Help Center as much as you can. We'll touch on that in a sec. And Suite Answers article numbers. So again, we'll take a quick look at Suite Answers now. So you've got your J-curve Solutions Support Hub, which we already took a look at the beginning of the session. You've got your NetSuite Help Center and Suite Answers, so you can access via the Help button or via the Support tab, and you can go directly to Suite Answers. You've got articles in here, video walkthroughs, webinars, etc., and the same with our J-curve Support Hub. Just a note that with regard to logging support tickets, you don't do that via NetSuite. Typically, if you've got your support with J-curve, you send us an email or you can log your ticket via our support hub. So Suite Answers is here, and in fact I'll just go via the menu that I just talked about. So you can go support and go to Suite Answers, or you can click on that help option there. I hope you found today useful and gotten some new tips and helpful hints out of it. Thank you for attending today's session. Sorry for going over. If you've jumped off, then you'll be watching this later. If you've got any further questions, as I said, email them to training@jcurve.com.au and we will notify you via email when that content is available to access. Thanks very much for attending and stay safe. Bye-bye.